My stepmom handed me a 30-day notice to vacate, so I countered with 24 hours, and she immediately wished she hadn't. My stepmom issued me a 30-day ultimatum to leave, so I gave her just 1 day. Allow me to explain how Beatrice converted my dad's residence into her private fairy tale palace, where I became the undesired servant girl she'd schemed to exile from the start. Beatrice Martinez possessed an amazing skill for turning my existence into torment while upholding her ideal step-parent image. She'd unintentionally spill my meal across the floor tiles, insisting she hadn't noticed my presence. She'd toss her used tea leaves and apple cores straight into my room's waste bin, pretending she was assisting with household tasks. The most awful event occurred when she swapped my anti-dandruff cleanser with genuine adhesive, and I almost lost all my hair before figuring it out. Yet the instant my father entered the space, Beatrice morphed into the ultimate homemaker. She'd dismiss any grievance I voiced with a charming chuckle. "Oh, Richard, Sarah's simply overreacting. You understand how adolescent females can act." Dad, poor guy, accepted every syllable since Beatrice had mastered the technique of deception with a grin. She'd prepare his preferred oatmeal raisin treats during my school hours, saving none for me, then claim I'd devoured them when he inquired. She'd offer to handle my clothes washing, then ruin my beloved tops by shrinking them and fault the dryer. Each vicious deed was masked as a mishap or my personal error, and Dad never pierced her act. The control was so delicate, so flawlessly carried out, that I began doubting my own mental state. Was I truly overreacting? Was Beatrice genuinely attempting to aid, and I was merely unappreciative? Reflecting now, I see she was an expert controller who understood precisely how to detach me from my dad's love, while casting herself as the casualty of my youthful defiance. But Beatrice committed one fatal error. She misjudged how deeply my father cared for me and how thoroughly he grasped her real character. That blunder would strip her of all she had. The facade began crumbling the instant Dad received his prognosis: advanced pancreatic malignancy. Beatrice viewed chance where I perceived disaster, and she acted swiftly to divide us during our greatest need for unity. Initially, she persuaded Dad to miss my ceremony at Washington High. "Richard, darling, all that thrill and feeling could overwhelm your condition," she murmured, massaging his back as I lingered in my robe and hat. Dr. Thompson explicitly advised avoiding intense events. That identical weekend, as I crossed the platform solo, Beatrice shared social media images from their intimate escape to Sonoma Valley, adorned with love symbols and blessed journey tags. When my admission notice came from Stanford University, including a merit-based grant, I was ecstatic. I'd labored intensely for years to achieve this, but Beatrice spotted profits, not aspirations. She arranged a worried household discussion on our money matters. "Richard, love, I've reviewed our accounts, and with these treatment costs mounting, I can't fathom covering Sarah's university fees," she stated, laying out financial records on the dining surface like a lawyer displaying proof. "Perhaps she ought to think about local college initially. It's the sensible choice." Dad appeared drained and beaten, agreeing as Beatrice depicted a scene of economic collapse. What she omitted was the pair of fresh luxury handbags in her wardrobe, $900 apiece, purchased that week, or the regular salon sessions she'd booked for relaxation. Evidently, my schooling was an extravagance we couldn't manage, but her high-end pampering was vital. I observed my ambitions shatter as Beatrice portrayed the practical, compassionate step-parent safeguarding our household's welfare. The lady who'd never held employment since wedding my father abruptly became our fiscal consultant, and Dad was too ill and weary to detect her falsehoods. But the true viciousness was yet to arrive, and it would dwarf all prior acts. The genuine brutality emerged when Dad joined Horizon Care Facility for end-of-life support. Beatrice named herself his main attendant and health representative, granting her alarming authority over his last moments and my entry to him. "Sarah, dear, your dad requires peace," Beatrice would declare, obstructing the entrance to his space like a guard at a private venue. "Dr. Anderson states excessive guests can exhaust dying individuals. I believe quarter-hour sessions every alternate day suffice, right?" In contrast, she'd occupy full evenings in his area, occasionally inviting her reading group pals to converse noisily outside about their newest fiction pick. In my short monitored meetings, I discovered Dad scarcely aware but still attempting to grip my palm. Beatrice would linger close, glancing at her smartwatch and shifting restlessly. "Sessions ended, honey. He must conserve strength for rehab." Rehab for someone who could hardly raise his neck. The deceptions grew more apparent, but the personnel trusted her as she held the health authority role. The harshest aspect was spotting her in Dad's quarters with piles of official papers scattered on his side stand. She'd bend over his cot, directing his unsteady grip to endorse form after form as he faded in and out. When I questioned what she was making him authorize, Beatrice's flawless grin remained steady. "Oh, honey, these are merely tedious adult matters like health instructions and coverage sheets," she replied, swiftly packing the files into her fancy shoulder bag. "You're too youthful to grasp duties like inheritance setup and asset handling. These are talks for grown-ups." I attempted remaining through the night once, dozing in the stiff guest seat simply to stay close to Dad. At midnight, Beatrice stormed in with security personnel, alleging I was bothering others by creating disturbance. I'd been positioned quietly, clasping Dad's hand as he rested. But Beatrice was persuasive, and I was removed like a disruptor. She was methodically isolating me from my fading father, and I seemed powerless, or that's what I believed. The day following Dad's burial, as I still wore my mourning attire from the ceremony and hadn't completed my tea, Beatrice strolled into the cooking area as if she'd struck gold. She dangled the property keys like a warden, and her sorrow display from the prior day had entirely disappeared. "Sarah, love, we must discuss your housing arrangement," she proclaimed, claiming Dad's preferred spot at the morning meal surface, the vintage wooden table from my mom's lineage that had stayed in our clan for decades. "This property is mine currently, and truthfully, I believe it's time you ventured out and secured your own spot." She pushed an official removal document over the surface, already completed in her elegant script, and timed the day post-burial. She'd readied this prior to Dad's interment. "I'm providing 30 days, which exceeds my obligations," Beatrice proceeded, inspecting her polished fingernails as if debating climate. "And candidly, dear, you represent a history I'd prefer to forget. Richard and I built our shared existence, and it's time I progressed without obstacles." What shattered my spirit wasn't the removal paper. It was viewing her positioned in my mother's cooking space, adorning my mother's diamond chain and sapphire studs, labeling me a vestige of yesteryear. This female had devoted years methodically removing me from my dad's world, and now she was actually expunging me from my youthful abode. I gazed at Beatrice Martinez, this female who'd enacted the affectionate step-parent while corrupting every bond I possessed, and something icy and strategic formed in my core. She desired a contest over home ownership? Okay, I wouldn't merely join, I'd obliterate her. I grinned back gently and stated, "We'll determine that." The assurance in her gaze wavered briefly, and I sensed she pondered my intent. She ought to have been concerned. She ought to have been petrified, since I was prepared to ruin her complete existence in under a day. I devoted the following day methodically searching every record Dad had provided me, and that's when I recalled the brown folder he delivered 2 years prior, labeled Sarah, access only if essential in his precise capital letters. I'd stored that folder in my keepsake container and truly overlooked it. Dad had behaved oddly that occasion, more grave than typical, and he'd extracted a vow to safeguard it but not reveal unless disaster struck. At 17, I figured he was exaggerating. Now I comprehended he'd been readying for battle. With shaky fingers, I unsealed the folder and discovered 3 transformative records within, plus a note in Dad's script that chilled me to the bone. "Sarah, if this reaches you, it indicates Beatrice has revealed her authentic self, and I'm absent to shield you. I've monitored her conduct over the last year, and I recognize precisely her personality type. I've witnessed her treatment of you when she assumes I'm unaware, and I've recorded all. These files will empower you to retaliate. Employ them judiciously. I cherish you beyond existence. Dad." The initial record was a property transfer authenticated and certified, indicating Dad had discreetly shifted the residence into a permanent trust, naming me as the only recipient. Dated 2 years back, immediately after Beatrice's pretense began faltering near him as well. The second was a premarital contract that Beatrice had endorsed, restricting her to solely the individual items she'd contributed to the union plus 1 car. She'd been so keen to wed Dad that she'd relinquished any entitlement to his holdings. The third was a certified declaration from Dr. Johnson, Dad's veteran doctor, verifying that Richard Thompson possessed full mental capacity and faced no coercion when establishing the trust and these arrangements. Beatrice was so assured in her control that she'd never anticipated this. She believed she'd executed the ideal scheme, but Dad had engaged in strategy while she dabbled in basics. I invested hours arranging the records, marking key parts, and gearing up for the most gratifying dialogue ever. The subsequent morning, I entered the cooking area where Beatrice was drinking tea from Mom's cherished cup and browsing property ads on her tablet, likely intending to list the home before my month expired. "Beatrice," I announced, placing my tea aside and occupying the chair opposite. "You were completely correct yesterday. Somebody certainly must depart this residence." She glanced up with that arrogant smirk, assuming I was set to plead for extension or bargain some weak agreement. "I'm delighted you're handling this maturely, Sarah. I knew you'd accept logic." "Oh, I perceive all quite distinctly now," I responded, positioning the transfer document between us. "This is my property. It has been for 2 years." Beatrice's look changed from arrogant to puzzled to utterly terrified as she seized the sheet and examined it desperately. Her grip trembled while absorbing the formal terms, her complexion paling as if drained. "This isn't possible," she murmured, rereading the identical section repeatedly. "I was his spouse. I possess entitlements. This is unfeasible. You do have entitlements," I concurred, pushing the premarital contract over with crucial areas marked in vivid orange. "You have entitlement to the personal goods you entered the marriage with, plus that Toyota Camry Dad gifted you last holiday. That's all." Beatrice's tea vessel shattered on the ground as she clutched the prenup with both palms, reviewing the paper she'd authorized so negligently years ago. The legal wording was stark and harsh. She qualified for nothing from Dad's holdings save what she'd expressly added to the union. "You sneaky brat," she snarled, her ideal step-parent disguise at last fully destroyed. "You've orchestrated this throughout, haven't you?" Acting the naive stepchild while scheming secretly, I shook my head steadily. "I didn't orchestrate a thing, Beatrice. Dad orchestrated this. He recognized precisely your character, and he safeguarded me from you beyond the grave." She rose so abruptly that her seat toppled rearward. "I'll challenge this. I'll engage top attorneys in the city. No chance this endures in litigation." That's when I revealed the last record, Dr. Johnson's certified affirmation verifying Dad's cognitive ability during trust creation. "Proceed and attempt," I declared, holding her enraged stare. "But you'll have to pursue it elsewhere. I require you gone from my property by tomorrow night, and truthfully, Beatrice, that's kinder than you merit." Beatrice began weeping, unattractive, controlling tears that she'd likely wielded for advantage her whole existence. Moments later, she was howling about kin devotion and spiritual mercy, deploying every sentimental tactic available. "Where can I possibly relocate, Sarah? I sacrificed all for your dad. I lack alternatives," she cried, extending for my palms as if we were reunited kin rather than foes. "Certainly we can negotiate. I'll improve as a stepmom, I swear." But I was already dialing secure locks to arrange urgent key replacement that day. "Hello, this is Sarah Thompson at 623 Oak Lane. I require every lock updated today." "Yes, it's a critical circumstance." Beatrice's cries shifted to fury as she realized I ignored her show. "You can't impose this on me. What would your father believe? What would your dear mother think of you evicting kin to the curb?" "My mother would think I'm at last defending myself," I answered, observing the lock expert's vehicle arrive in our drive. "And Dad? Dad engineered this entire scenario. He predicted you'd expose your genuine self once he departed." By evening that day, Beatrice's luxury suitcases were piled on the front grass like a fancy outdoor market. She lingered in the drive yelling about household principles and religious kindness, while our community observed from their homes like premium entertainment. "This isn't finished, Sarah," she yelled, stuffing her luxury sacks into her vehicle. "I'll sue you. I'll reveal what a deceitful little sorceress you truly are. All will learn the facts." "The facts," I shouted back from the entrance steps. "The facts are that you wed a terminal man for his wealth, tormented his child for years, and assumed you were clever enough to escape consequences. How did that pan out for you, Beatrice?" She bellowed obscenities that would shock a mariner, damning both me and Dad's legacy, before speeding away in a haze of tire smoke and damaged ego. The following day, I discovered her removal document in the waste container and had it expertly mounted. It currently adorns my study as a memento that occasionally fate provides flawless retribution. You simply must wait for it to develop. Beatrice instructed me to secure my own residence. It turns out I already possessed one.